This play is called Our Town. It was written by Thornton Wilder, adapted and directed by Robin Wright, with production assistance of Kathy Woods. The name of the town is Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, just across the Massachusetts line. The first act shows a day in our town. The day is May 7, 1901. The time is just before dawn. The sky is beginning to show some streaks of light over in the east there behind our mountain. The morning star always gets wonderful bright the minute before it has to go, doesn't it? Well, I better show you how our town lies. Up here is Main Street. Way back there is the railway station. Tracks go that way. Polish towns across the tracks. Over there is the Congregational Church. Across the street's the Presbyterian. Methodist and Unitarian are over there. Baptist down by the holler, by the river. Catholic Church is over beyond the tracks. Here's the town hall. Jail's in the basement. Along here is a row of stores. Hitching posts and horse blocks in front of them. The first automobile is going to come along in about 5 years, belonging to banker Cartwright, our richest citizen. Lives in the big white house up on the hill. Public schools over yonder, high schools still farther over. This is our doctor's house, Doc Gibbs. And here comes Mrs. Gibbs, coming downstairs to make breakfast. Doc Gibbs died in 1930. The new hospital's named after him. Mrs. Gibbs died first a long time ago. She's up in the cemetery there now, with a whole mess of Gibbses and Herseys. She was Julia Hersey before she married Doc Gibbs in the Congregational Church over there. In our town, we like to know the facts about everybody. Next door here is Editor Webb's house. In those days, our newspaper came out twice a week. And there's Mrs. Webb, coming downstairs to get her breakfast too.
Children, time to get up. George, Rebecca. Everything all right, Frank?
Yes, I declare. Easy as kittens.
Bacon will be ready in a minute. Sit down and drink your coffee. You can catch a couple hours sleep this morning, can't you? I do wish I could get you away someplace and take a rest. I think it would do you good.
Emily, time to get up. Wally, 7 o'clock.
I declare, you've got to speak to George. Seems like something's come over him lately. He's no help to me at all. I can't even get him to cut some wood.
Is he sassy to you?
No, he just whines. All he thinks about is that baseball. George, Rebecca, you'll be late for school.
George, look sharp.
Yes, Pa.
Wally, Emily, you'll be late for school. Wally, you wash yourself good or I'll come and do it myself.
Mom, what dress shall I wear?
Don't make a noise. Your father's been out all night and needs his sleep. I washed and ironed the blue gingham for you, special.
Oh, Ma, I hate that dress. Every day I have to go to school dressed like a sick turkey.
Oh,
Mama, George is throwing soap at me.
I'll come up and slap the both of you. That's what I'll do.
We've got a factory in our town too. Hear it? Makes blankets. Cartwrights own it, and it brought them a fortune.
Children, now I won't have it. I won't have you gobbling like wolves. It'll stunt your growth. That's fact. Put away your book, Wally.
Oh, Ma, by 10 o'clock, I gotta know all about Canada.
You know the rules well as I do. No books at table. As for me, I'd rather have my children healthy than bright.
I'm both, Mama. You know I am. I'm the brightest girl in school for my age. I have a wonderful memory.
Eat your breakfast.
I'm bright too when I'm looking at my stamp collection.
George, I'll speak to your father about it when he's rested. Seems to me 25 cents a week's enough for a boy your age. I declare, I don't know where you spend it all.
Oh, Mom, I got a lot of things to buy.
Strawberry phosphates, that's what you spend it on.
Oh, Mama, do you know what I love most in the world? Do you? Money.
Eat your breakfast.
I don't want
Mama, there's the first
We
bell.
gotta go.
Good morning, Myrtle. How's your cold?
Well, I told Charles I didn't know if I'd go to the choir practice tonight. Wouldn't be any use. While I'm resting myself, I thought I'd string some of these beans.
Well, let me help you. Beans have been good this year.
I've decided to put up 40 quarts if it kills me.
Now, Myrtle, I've got to tell you something. Because if I don't tell somebody, I'll burst.
Why, Julia Gibbs.
Myrtle, did one of those second-hand furniture men from Boston come to see you last Friday?
No.
Well, he called on me. First, I thought he was a patient wanting to see Dr. Gibbs. Then he wormed his way into my parlor, and Myrtle Webb, he offered me $350 for Grandmother Wentworth's highboy, as I'm sitting here.
Why, Julia Gibbs.
He did. That old thing? Why, it was so big, I didn't know where to put it. And I almost gave it to Cousin Hester Wilcox.
Well, you're going to take it, aren't you?
If I could get the doctor to take the money and go away someplace on a real trip, I'd sell it like that. You know, Myrtle, it's been the dream of my life to see Paris, France. Oh, I don't know. Sounds crazy, I suppose, but for years I've been promising myself if we ever got the chance.
Well, if that second-hand man's really serious about buying it, Julia, you sell it.
Oh, I'm sorry I mentioned it. Only it seems to me that once in your life, before you die, you ought to see a country where they don't talk in English and they don't even want to.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. Now we're going to skip a few hours, but first we want a little more information about our town. Editor Webb has agreed to give us a political and social report. Mr. Webb is publisher and editor of the Grover's Corner Sentinel. That's our local paper, you know. Mr. Webb?
Well, the original settlers of Grover's Corners were English stock, for the most part. They came around the end of the 17th century. Since then, some Slavs and Mediterraneans. I don't have to tell you, we're run here by a board of selectmen. All males vote at the age of 21, women vote direct. We're lower middle class, sprinkling of professional men, 10% illiterate laborers. Religiously, we're 85% Protestants, 12% Catholics, rest indifferent.
Any further comment, Mr. Webb?
Very ordinary town, if you ask me. A little better behaved than most, probably a lot duller. Oh, we got one or two town drunks, but they're always having remorses every time an evangelist comes to town. Our young people here seem to like it well enough. 90% of them graduating from high school settled down right here to live, even when they've been away to college.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Now we'll go back to the town. It's early afternoon. All 2,642 of us have had our dinners, and all the dishes have been washed. There's an early afternoon calm in our town, a buzzing and a humming from the school buildings. Only a few buggies on Main Street, the horses dozing at the hitching posts. You all remember what it's like. No, sir, it's later than I thought. There are the children coming home from school already. And there's George, walking fast to catch up to Emily.
Hello, Emily.
Hello.
You made a fine speech in class.
Well, I worked an awful long time on it.
Gee, it's funny, Emily.
From my window up there, I can just see your head at night when you're doing your homework over in your room.
Why, can you?
You certainly do stick to it, Emily. I don't see how you can sit still that long. I guess you like school?
Well, I always feel it's something you have to go through.
Yeah,
I don't mind it, really. It passes the time.
yeah. Emily, what do you think? We might work out a kind of telegraph from your window to mine? And once in a while, you could give me a kind of hint or two about one of those algebra problems. I don't mean the answers, Emily, just some little hint.
Oh, I think hints are allowed. So, if you get stuck, George, you whistle to me, and I'll give you some hints.
Emily, you're just naturally bright, I guess.
I figure that's just the way a person's born.
Yeah, but you see, I want to be a farmer. And my Uncle Luke says, whenever I'm ready, I can come over and work on his farm. And if I'm any good at it, I can just gradually have it.
You mean the house and everything?
Yeah. Well, I better be getting out to the baseball field. Thanks for the talk, Emily, though. So long.
So long, George. Mama, will you answer a question serious?
Seriously, dear. Not serious.
Seriously, will you?
Of course I will.
Mama, am I good looking?
Of course you are. All my children have got good features. I'd be ashamed if they hadn't.
Oh, Mama, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, am I pretty?
I've already told you yes. Now that's enough of that. You have a nice, young, pretty face. I never heard such foolishness.
Mama, were you pretty?
Well, yes I was, if I do say it. I was the prettiest girl in the town, next to Mamie Cartwright.
But Mama, you've got to say something about me. Am I pretty enough to get anyone interested in me?
Emily, you make me tired. Now stop it. You're pretty enough for all normal purposes.
Oh, Mama, you're no help at all.
Thank you, thank you. We'll have to interrupt again here. Thank you, Mrs. Webb. Thank you, Emily. I think this is a good time to tell you that the Cartwright interests have just begun building a bank in Grover's Corners. Had to go to Vermont for the stone, I'm sorry to say. And they've asked what to put in the cornerstone for people to dig up 1,000 years from now. Of course, they put in a copy of the New York Times and a copy of Mr. Webb's Sentinel. We're putting in a Bible and the Constitution of the United States and a copy of William Shakespeare's plays. So I'm going to have a copy of this play put in the cornerstone. And the people 1,000 years from now know this is the way we were in the provinces north of New York at the beginning of the 20th century. This is the way we were in our growing up, and in our marrying, and in our living, and in our dying. Well, a good deal of time has gone by. It's evening. You can hear choir practice going on in the Congregational Church with Simon Stimson, organist and choir director. The children are at home doing their homework. The day's running down like a tired clock.
Now look here, everybody. Music come into the world to give pleasure. Softer, softer. Get it out of your heads that music's only good if it's loud. You leave loudness to the Methodists. You can't feed them even if you wanted to. Now again, tenors.
Looks like George needs a hint from Emily.
Shh. Emily?
Hello, George. I can't work at all. The moonlights are terrible.
Emily, did you get the third problem?
Why, George, that's the easiest
see it. Emily, will you give me a hint?
I'll tell you one thing. The answer's in yards.
In yards? How do you mean?
In square yards.
Oh, in square yards.
Yes, George, don't you see?
Yeah?
In square yards of wallpaper.
Wallpaper. Oh, I see. Thanks a lot, Emily.
You're welcome. My, isn't the moonlight terrible? And the choir practice going on. Hear it?
Yeah?
Well, I guess I better go back and try to work.
Good night, Emily, and thanks.
Good night, George.
Before I forget, how many of you will be able to come and sing at Fred Hersey's wedding? That's good. That'll be nice. Now we'll do Art Thou Weary, Art Thou Languid. It's a question, ladies and gentlemen. Make it talk. Ready?
Oh, George, can you come down here a minute?
Yes, Pa?
George, how old are you?
I'm 16, almost 17.
What do you want to do after school's over?
Why, you know, Pa, I want to be a farmer on Uncle Luke's farm.
You'd be willing, will you, to get up early and milk and feed the stock? And you'll be able to hoe and hay all day?
Well, sure I will. What do you mean, Pa?
Well, George, I was in my office today and I heard a funny sound. And what do you think it was? It was your mother chopping wood. I suppose she just got tired of asking you. She just gave up and decided it was easier to do it herself. And you eat her meals, and you put on the clothes that she keeps nice for you, and you run off and play baseball. Like she's a hired girl we keep around the house, but we don't like very much. Well, I knew all I had to do was call your attention to it. Here's the handkerchief, son. George, I've decided to raise your spending money 25 cents a week. Not for chopping wood for your mother, because that's a present that you give her, but because you're getting older. And I imagine there are a lot of things you must find to do with it.
Thanks, Pa.
Oh, well, looks like choir practice is over. Here come the ladies out of the church.
My, it's late. Real nice choir practice, wasn't it? Myrtle Webb, look at that moon, will you? Potato weather for sure.
Naturally. I didn't want to say a word in front of the others, but now we're alone. Really, it's the worst scandal that ever was in this town.
What?
Simon Stimson.
Now, Luella.
But Julia, to have an organist of a church drink and drunk, year after year, you know he was drunk tonight.
Now, Luella, we all know about Mr. Stimson, and we all know about the troubles he's been through.
But it's getting worse.
No, it isn't, Luella. It's getting better. It doesn't happen anywhere near as often. My, I hate to go to bed on a night like this. I better hurry. Those children will be sitting up till all hours. Good night, Luella. Good night.
Good night.
Can you get home safe, Luella?
Oh, it's bright as day. I can see Mr. Soames scowling at the window right now. You'd think we'd been to a dance the way the men folk carry on. Good night.
Good night. Well, we had a real good time.
Well, you're late enough.
Why, Frank, it ain't any later than usual.
And you stopping at the corner to gossip with a lot of hens?
Well, believe me, Frank, there's something to gossip about.
Simon Stimson, far gone, was he?
Worst I've ever seen him. Golly, would end, Frank.
I guess I know more about Simon Stimson's affairs than anybody in this town. Some people ain't made for small town life. I don't know how that'll all end, but there's nothing we can do but just leave it alone. Come on, let's go up.
You know, Frank, Mrs. Fairchild always locks her front door every night. All those people up that part of town do.
Well, they're all getting citified. That's the trouble with them. They haven't got nothing fit to burgle, and everybody knows it.
9:30, most of the lights are out. There's Constable Warren trying a few doors on Main Street. And here comes Editor Webb after putting his paper to bed.
Who's up there? Is that you, Myrtle?
No, it's me, Papa.
Oh, why are you in bed?
I don't know. I just can't sleep yet, Papa. The moonlight's so wonderful, and the smell of Mrs. Gibbs' heliotrope. Can you smell it?
Yes. Having any troubles on your mind, have you, Emily?
Troubles, Papa? No.
Well, enjoy yourself, but don't let your mother catch you. Good night, Emily.
Good night, Papa.
Well, that's the end of the first act, friends, but you won't have time to go out for a smoke because Act 2 starts in just a minute. 3 years have gone by. Yes, the sun's come up over 1,000 times. Some babies that weren't even born before have begun talking regular sentences already. And a number of people who thought they were right young and spry have noticed that they can't bound up a flight of stairs like they used to without their hearts fluttering a little. All that can happen in 1,000 days. Nature's been pushing and contriving in other ways, too. A number of young people fell in love and got married. Almost everybody in the world gets married. You know what I mean? In our town, there aren't hardly any exceptions. Most everybody climbs into their grave married. The first act was called Daily Life. This act is called Love and Marriage. There's another act coming after this. I reckon you can guess what that's about. So it's 3 years later. It's 1904, it's July 7th, just after high school commencement. That's the time most of our young people jump up and get married. Soon as they pass their last examinations in solid geometry and Cicero's orations, looks like they suddenly feel themselves fit to be married. It's early morning, only this time it's been raining, pouring and thundering. And there's Mrs. Gibbs and Mrs. Webb coming down to make breakfast like it was an ordinary day.
Well, Ma, the day has come. You're losing one of your checks.
Frank Gibbs, don't you say another word. I feel like crying every minute. Sit down and drink your coffee.
The groom's up shaving himself. Only there ain't a lot to shave. Whistling and singing like he's glad to leave us. Every so often he says, "I do," to the mirror. But it don't sound convincing to me.
I declare, Frank, I don't know how he'll get along. I've always seen to it he puts warm things on and... Frank, they're too young. Emily won't think of such things. He'll catch his death of cold within a week.
I was remembering my wedding morning, Julia.
Now don't start that, Frank.
I was the scaredest young fella in the state of New Hampshire. I thought I'd make a mistake for sure. And when I saw you coming down that aisle, I thought you were the prettiest girl I had ever seen. But the only trouble was, I had never seen you before. There I was in the Congregational Church, marrying a total stranger.
And how do you think I felt? Frank, weddings are perfectly awful things. Farces, that's what they are.
How'd you sleep last night, Julia?
Well, I heard a lot of the hours struck off.
Yes. I get a shock every time I think of George setting out to be a family man. That great gangling thing. I tell you, Julia, there's nothing so terrifying in the world as a son. The relation of father and son is the darndest awkward.
Well, mother and daughter's no picnic, let me tell you.
They'll have lots of troubles, I suppose. But that's none of our business. Everyone has a right to their own troubles.
Yes, people are meant to go through life 2 by 2. It ain't natural to be lonesome.
Good morning, everybody. Only 5 more hours to live.
George Gibbs, where are you going?
Just stepping across the grass to see my girl.
Now, George, you put on your overshoes. It's raining torrents.
Oh, Ma, it's just a step.
George, you'll catch your death of cold and cough all through the service.
George, do as your mother tells you.
Be back in a minute. Good morning, Mother Webb.
Goodness, you frightened me. Now, George, you can come in a minute out of the wet, but you know I can't ask you in.
Why not?
George, you know as well as I do, a groom can't see his bride on his wedding day, not until he sees her in church.
Oh, that's just a superstition. Good morning, Mr. Webb.
Good morning, George.
Mr. Webb, you don't believe in that superstition, do you?
There's a lot of common sense in some superstitions, George.
Millions have followed it, George, and you don't want to be the first to fly in the face of custom.
How's Emily?
She hasn't waked up yet. I haven't heard a sound out of her.
Emily's asleep?
No wonder we were up till all hours, sewing and packing. Now I'll tell you what I'll do. You sit down here a minute with Mr. Webb and drink this cup of coffee, and I'll go upstairs and see if she doesn't come down and surprise you. There's some bacon, too, but don't be long about it.
Hello, George. How are you?
Oh, fine. I'm fine. Mr. Webb, what sense could there be in a superstition like that? I wish a fella could get married without all that marching up and down.
Every man that's ever lived has felt that way about it, George. But it hasn't been any use since the women folk could build up weddings, my boy. The man looks pretty small at a wedding, George. All those good women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure that the knot's tied in a mighty public way.
But you believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Don't misunderstand me, my boy. Marriage is a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing. And don't you forget that, George.
No, sir. Mr. Webb, how old were you when you got married?
Well, you see, I'd been to college and I'd taken a little time to get settled. But Mrs. Webb, she was much older than Emily is. Oh, age hasn't much to do with it, George. Not compared with other things.
What were you going to say, Mr. Webb?
Oh, I don't know. Was I going to say something? George, I was thinking the other night of some advice my father gave me when I got married. Charles, he said, Charles, start out early showing who's boss. Best thing to do is to give an order, even if it don't make no sense, just so she'll learn to obey. And he said, if anything about your wife irritates you, her conversation or anything, just get up and leave the house. That'll make it clear to her, he said. And, oh yes, he said, never let your wife know how much money you have. Never.
Well, Mr. Webb, I don't think I could.
So I took the opposite of my father's advice. And I've been happy ever since. And let that be a lesson to you, George, never to ask advice on personal matters.
George, Emily's got to come downstairs and eat her breakfast. She sends you her love, but she doesn't want to lay eyes on you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Myrtle, I guess you don't know about that older superstition.
What do you mean, Charles?
Since the cavemen, no bridegroom should see his father-in-law on the day of the wedding. I'll remember that.
Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Webb. Now I have to interrupt again here. You see, we want to know how all this began. This wedding, this plan to spend a lifetime together. I'm awfully interested in how big things like that begin. George and Emily are going to show you how the conversation they had when they first knew they were, as the saying goes, meant for each other. But before they do, I want you to try to remember what it was like to be very young, and particularly the days when you were first in love, when you were like a person sleepwalking, and you didn't quite see the street you were in, and didn't quite hear everything that was said to you. You're just a little bit crazy. Will you remember that, please? Now, they'll be coming out of high school at 3 o'clock. Yep, there they are, coming down Main Street now.
Emily, why are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you.
You've been treating me so funny lately.
Well, since you asked me, I might as well say it right out, George. I don't like the whole change that's come over you in the last year. I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings, but I've got to tell the truth and shame the devil.
A change? What do you mean?
Well, up to a year ago, I used to like you a lot. And I used to watch as you did everything, because we'd been friends so long. And then you began spending all your time at baseball. And you never stopped to speak to anyone anymore. And George, it's a fact. You've got awful stuck up and conceited. And all the girls say so. And it hurts me to hear them say it. But I've got to agree with them a little. I'm sorry if it hurts your feelings, but I can't be sorry I said it.
I'm glad you said it, Emily. I never thought that such a thing was happening to me. I guess it's hard for a fella not to have faults creep into his character.
Well, I always expect a man to be perfect, and I think he should be.
Oh, I don't think it's possible to be perfect, Emily. Anyway, I feel it's the other way around. That men aren't naturally good, but girls are.
Well, you might as well know right now that I'm not perfect. Now, I'm sorry I said all that about you. I don't know what made me say it.
Emily?
Now, I can see it's not the truth at all. And I suddenly feel that it isn't important anyway.
Emily, would you like an ice cream soda or something before you go home?
Well, thank you. I would. I'll have a strawberry phosphate.
No, Emily, have an ice cream soda with me.
They're so expensive.
Oh, don't think of that, because I'm celebrating. Do you know what I'm celebrating, Emily?
No.
I'm celebrating because I have a friend who tells me all the things that ought to be told me.
Oh, George, please don't think of that. I don't know why I said it. It's not true.
No, Emily, you stick to it. I'm glad you spoke to me like you did. But you'll see, I'm going to change so quick. And Emily, I want to ask you a favor.
What?
If I go away to agricultural college next year, will you write me a letter once in a while?
Oh, I certainly will, George. But maybe letters from Grover's Corners wouldn't be so interesting after a while. Grover's Corners isn't a very important place when you think of all New Hampshire. But I think it's a very nice town.
the day wouldn't come when I wouldn't want to know everything that's happening here.
Well, I'll try to make my letters interesting.
You know, Emily, whenever I meet a farmer, I ask him if he thinks it's important to go to agriculture school to be a good farmer.
Why, George.
Yeah, and some of them even say it's a waste of time. You can get all those things anyway out of the pamphlets the government sends out. And Uncle Luke's getting old. He's about ready for me to start in taking over his farm tomorrow, if I could.
My.
And like you say, being gone all that time in other places and meeting other people. Gosh, if anything like that can happen, I don't want to go away. I guess new people aren't any better than old ones. I bet they almost never are. Emily, I feel that you're as good a friend as I've got. I don't need to go and meet the people in other towns. I'm going to make up my mind right now. I won't go. I'll tell Pa about it tonight.
Why, George, I don't see why you have to decide right now. It's a whole year away.
Emily, I'm glad you spoke to me about that fault in my character. What you said was right, but there was one thing wrong in it. And that was when you said that for a year I wasn't noticing people. And you, for instance. Why, you say you were watching me when I did everything? I was doing the same thing about you all the time. I always made sure where you were sitting in the bleachers and who you were with.
George, that's awful funny. How could I have known that? Why, I thought...
Listen, Emily, I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to agricultural school. I think that once you've found a person that you're very fond of, I mean a person who's fond of you too, and likes you enough to be interested in your character, well, I think that's just as important as college is, and even more so. That's what I think.
I think it's awfully important, too.
Emily?
Yes, George?
Emily, if I do improve, and I make a big change, would you be, could you be?
I am now. I always have been.
So, I guess this is an important talk we've been having.
Yes, yes.
Well, now we can get on with the wedding. There are a lot of things to be said about a wedding. There are a lot of thoughts that go on during a wedding. You can't get them all into one wedding, naturally, and especially not into a wedding at Grover's Corners, where they're awfully plain and short. For a while now, the play gets pretty serious. You see, some churches say marriage is a sacrament. I don't quite know what that means, but I can guess. Like Mrs. Gibbs said a few minutes ago, people were meant to live 2 by 2. This is a good wedding, but people are so put together that even at a good wedding, there's a lot of confusion way down deep in people's minds, and we thought that ought to be in our play, too.
I don't know why I should be crying. It came over me at breakfast this morning. And Emily, she suddenly said, I can't eat another mouthful. And she put her head down on the table and she cried. Oh, I've got to say it. You know, there's something downright cruel about sending our girls into marriage this way. I hope some of her girlfriends have told her a thing or two. It's cruel. I know, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I went into it as blind as a bat myself.
George, what's the matter?
Ma, I don't want to grow old. Why is everybody pushing me so?
Why, George, you wanted it.
No, Ma, listen to me. I just want to be a fella.
No, George, you're a man now.
Ma, for the last time, I asked you...
George, now stop. Why, I'm ashamed of you.
What? Where's Emily?
George, you gave me such a turn.
Cheer up, Ma. I'm getting married.
Let me catch my breath.
I never felt so alone in my whole life. And George over there looking so... I hate him. I wish I were Dad. Papa.
Emily, don't get upset.
But Papa, I don't want to get married.
Emily, everything's all right. Well, you're marrying the best young fellow in the world. George is a fine fellow.
Why can't I stay for a while just as I am?
No, Emily. Now stop and think. You're just nervous. George, will you come here a minute? I'm giving away my daughter, George. Do you think you can take care of her?
Mr. Webb, Emily, I'm going to do my best. I love you, Emily. I need you.
Well, if you love me, help me. All I want is someone to love me.
I will, Emily. I'll try. I will.
And I mean forever. Do you hear? Forever and ever.
Come quick now. They're waiting for us.
Do you, George, take this woman, Emily, to be your wedded wife, to have the whole
Perfectly lovely wedding. Loveliest wedding I ever saw. Oh, I do love a good wedding, don't you?
Do you,
Oh,
Emily,
doesn't she make a lovely bride?
Do you, Emily, take this man, George, to be your wedded husband?
I don't know when I've seen such a lovely wedding, but I always cry. Don't know why it is, but I always cry. I just like to see young people happy, don't you?
That's all the second act, folks. No intermission. This time, 9 years have gone by, friends. Summer 1913. Gradual changes in Grover's Corners. Horses are getting rarer. Farmers coming into town in phones. Everybody locks their doors now at night. Ain't been any burglars in town yet, but everybody's heard about them. You'd be surprised, though. On the whole, things don't change much around here. Well, this is certainly an important part of Grover's Corners. It's on a hilltop, lots of sky, lots of clouds, lots of sun and moon and stars. Beautiful spot up here, mountain laurel and lilacs. I often wonder why people like to be buried in Woodlawn in Brooklyn when they might pass the same time up here in New Hampshire. Over there are the old stones, 1670, 1680, strong-minded people who come a long way to be independent. Summer people walk around here laughing at the funny words on the tombstones. It don't do any harm. And genealogists come up here from Boston, get paid by city people for looking up their ancestors. Want to make sure they're daughters of the American Revolution and of the Mayflower. Well, I guess that don't do any harm either. Wherever you come near the human race, there's layers and layers of nonsense. Over here are some Civil War veterans, New Hampshire boys, had a notion that the Union ought to be kept together, though they'd never seen more than 50 miles of it themselves. All they knew was the name, friends, the United States of America, and they went and died for it. This here's the new part of the cemetery. Here's your friend, Mrs. Gibbs. And let me see, here's Mr. Stimson, the organist at the Congregational Church, and Mrs. Soames, who enjoyed the wedding so, you remember? Oh, and lots of others. Yes, an awful lot of sorrow has sort of quieted down up here. We're all glad our relatives are in a beautiful place, and we're coming up here ourselves when our fit's over. Now, there are some things we all know, but we don't take them out and look at them very often. We all know that something is eternal, and it ain't houses, and it ain't names, and it ain't earth, and it ain't even the stars. Everybody knows in their bones that something is eternal, and that something has to do with human beings. All the greatest people ever lived have been telling us that for 5,000 years, and yet you'd be surprised how people are always losing hold of it. There's something way down deep that's eternal about every human being. You know as well as I do that the dead don't stay interested in us living people for very long. Gradually, they lose hold of the earth and the ambitions they had and the things they suffered and the people they loved. They get weaned away from the earth. That's the way I put it, weaned away. And they stay here until the earth part of them burns away. And all that time, they slowly get indifferent to what's going on in Grover's Corners. They're waiting, and they're waiting for something that they feel is coming. Aren't they waiting for the eternal part of themselves to come out clear? Well, there are some living people. There's Joe Stoddard, our undertaker, talking to a Grover's Corners boy that left town to go out west.
Well, there's your Aunt Julia. Yes, but Doc Gibbs lost his wife 2 to 3 years ago, about this time. Today's a pretty bad blow for him, too.
That's my sister Carrie's boy, Sam Craig.
I'm always uncomfortable when they're around.
Son.
And here's Simon Stimson. You remember Simon. Organist at the church, wasn't he? Drank a lot. He'd seen a peck of trouble. Took his own life, you know. They tried to hush it up, but of course it got around. He chose his own epitaph. You can see it there. It ain't a verse, actually. It's just some notes of music. Don't know why. It was wrote up in the Boston papers at the time. And your cousin's going right there. There ain't much room over here among the Gibbses. So they're opening a whole new Gibbs section. You'll excuse me now. I see they're coming.
Who is it, Julia?
My daughter-in-law, Emily Webb.
Well, I declare, the road up must have been awful muddy. What did she die of, Julia?
In childbirth.
Childbirth. I'd forgotten all about that. My, wasn't life awful and wonderful?
Wonderful, was it?
Simon, now remember.
I remember Emily's wedding. Wasn't it a lovely wedding? I called on them at their new farm just before I died. Oh, I always liked that hymn. I was hoping they'd sing a hymn.
Hello?
Hello, Emily.
Hello, Mrs. Gibbs.
Emily.
It seems thousands of years ago since Papa, remember that was my favorite hymn. How do you do, Mr. Stimson?
How do you do, Emily?
Mother Gibbs, George and I have made that farm into just the best place you ever saw with the help of that legacy you left us. Over $350.
Yes, Emily.
It won't be the same to George without me, but it's a lovely farm. Live people don't understand, do they?
No, dear, not very much.
Mother Gibbs, when does this feeling go away of being one of them? How long does it...
Shh, dear. Just wait and be patient.
I know. Look, they're finished. They're going.
Shh.
Look, Father Gibbs is bringing some of my flowers to you. Oh, Mother Gibbs, I never realized before how troubled and how in the dark live persons are. Look at him. From morning to night, that's all they are, troubled.
A little cooler than it was. Rain cooled it off a little.
Mother Gibbs, one can go back there again. I feel it. I know it.
Yes, of course you can. All I can say is, Emily, don't.
I can go back there and live all those days over again? Why not?
Oh, Emily, it isn't wise. Really, it isn't. When you've been here longer, you'll understand.
But it's a thing I must know for myself. I'll choose a happy day anyway.
No, at least choose an unimportant day. It will be important enough.
I choose a birthday at least, can't I? I choose my 12th birthday.
All right. February 11th, 1899, a Tuesday. Do you want any special time of day?
Oh, I want the whole day.
We'll begin at dawn.
There's Main Street. Why, there's Mr. Morgan's drugstore before he changed it. And there's the livery stable.
Yes, it's 1899. That's 14 years ago.
Oh, that's the town I knew as a little girl. And look, there's the old white fence that used to be around our house. Are they inside?
Yes, your mother will be coming downstairs in a minute to make breakfast.
Will she?
Children, Wally, Emily, time to get up.
Good morning, Mother.
Papa.
How did it go, Charles?
Oh, fine, I guess. Everything all right here?
Yes. Can't think of anything that's happened special. Been right cold.
Yes. Well, over at Hamilton College, students' ears are falling off. It ain't Christian. Paper have any mistakes?
Not that I noticed. Charles, don't forget, it's Emily's birthday. Did you remember to get her anything?
Yes, I got something right here.
Hurry up, children. I don't want to call you again.
I can't bear it. They're so young and beautiful. Why do they ever have to get old? Mama, I'm here. I'm grown up. I love you all. Everything. I can't look at everything hard enough. Can I go in?
Yes.
Good morning, Mama.
Well now, dear, a very happy birthday to you, to my girl, and many happy returns. There are some surprises waiting for you on the kitchen table. That in the blue paper is from your Aunt Carrie, and I reckon you can guess who brought the postcard album. I found it on the doorstep when I brought in the milk. George Gibbs. Must have come over and looked home pretty early. Right nice of him.
Oh, George, I've forgotten that.
Chew that bacon good and slow. It'll help keep you warm on a cold day.
Oh, Mama, just look at me 1 minute, as though you really saw me. Mama, 14 years have gone by. I'm dead. You're a grandmother, Mama. Wally's dead, too. But just for a moment, now we're all together. Mama, just for a moment, we're happy. Let's look at one another.
Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
I can't go on. It goes so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. I didn't realize, so all that was going on, and we never noticed. Take me back up the hill to my grave. But first, wait. One more look. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corners. Mama and Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking and Mama's sunflowers. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anyone to realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it?
No. Well, the saints and poets, maybe. They do some.
I'm ready to go back.
Were you happy?
No, I should have listened to you. That's all human beings are, just blind people.
Look, it's clearing up. The stars are coming out.
Oh, Mr. Simpson, I should have listened to them.
Yes, now you know. That's what it was to be alive, to move about in a cloud of ignorance, to go up and down trampling on the feelings of those about you, to be always at the mercy of one self-centered passion or another. Now you know. That's the happy existence you wanted to go back to. Ignorance and blindness.
Simon Stimson, that ain't the whole truth, and you know it. Emily, look at that star.
A star is mighty good company.
Here's one of them coming.
Mother Gibbs, it's George.
Shh, dear, just rest yourself.
But Mother Gibbs, he's thrown himself on my grave.
Oh, goodness, that ain't no way to behave.
He ought to go home.
Mother Gibbs?
Yes, Emily?
They don't understand, do they?
No, dear. They don't understand.
Most everybody's asleep in Grover's Corners. Yes, it's clearing up. There are the stars, doing their own crisscross journeys in the sky. Scholars haven't settled the matter yet, but they seem to think there are no living beings up there. Only this one is straining away all the time to make something of itself. A strain so bad that every 16 hours, everybody lies down to get a rest. 11 o'clock in Grover's Corners. You get a good rest too. Good night.
I don't know what, hours and hours, just getting it together.
We always seem like the odd couple. Scranny something, and she was always in charge.
And the artist?
Really wonderful.
How about the artist?
The artist? Yeah. Well, yes, Ione Bell.
Yes, please.
And the anonymous chorus,
Who's in the
Jan
chorus?
is not anonymous. If anybody else wants to stand up, we'd like to know who it is.
Please, yes. Who's in that? Who's in that chorus?
They don't want to? Joe was in it. Is that okay? Anyway. Well, this is the most amazing cast. They're wonderful. And I really want to acknowledge something, and I think most of you probably. And Brooke stepped in at the very last minute. I don't know what we would have done. But we